Right. Hi everyone, it's been a pleasure to introduce Dr. Philipp Lorenz-Spreen. Philipp is a research scientist at the Max Planck Institute for Human Development in Berlin, where he conducts research on self-organized online discourse and how to empower democratic and autonomous decision-making through platform design and boosting. He's a close collaborator of us at TeDCog, and you can almost call him a lab affiliate. Philipp will talk today about an exciting topic about the field experiments on social media, current directions, and practical implications from past experiences. So, Philipp, thank you so much for joining us today.
Yes, thank you for the opportunity to tell you a bit about our project. So I'll present. I would like to keep the discussion long and lively because, first of all, this is work of progress. I will rather show you, practical implications, what we learned for conducting field experiments on Twitter, particularly, and I think the best way also to answer your questions is if you ask them. So either interrupt me, but also we can have a longer discussion in the end. And I will now share my slides and, give you an overview of what we did. Okay. So you see my slides? Good.
Yeah.
Good. Okay. Field experiments on social media, exactly. So, wait, I have, okay, I see the chat. 1 second. I have to move the chat somewhere else. There, okay. Good. So, a bit of motivation, okay? I'll try to be not too long on that because I think in this crowd, I don't have to motivate social media research, but maybe more particular, this approach. Maybe together with Steve as well, we did a systematic review recently. We found many papers. Those papers are about digital media and democracy in all its variations. And these papers also seem to be published in an accelerating pace. So you see here time and numbers of documents in our sample. So this is a hot topic, and what I wanted to highlight just for this particular talk is that we looked at the methods people used for these papers, and there are these two columns in this matrix. So this is number of documents, is the heat map, and there is on the left is the outcome measure, and on the bottom is the method. And there were papers using some way to combine survey data with behavioral data, not necessarily from social media in this case. It can also be voting numbers or broadband connections in the municipalities and stuff like that. But then there's this other column, also social media combined, which means those are all papers that use some way of combining social media with some other data set, usually some survey-based data. So there is stuff. So there are papers doing, in that sense, digital field experiments. But it's not so many. It's not the most like the most researched category, and there are also some gaps, as you might spot. For example, the dimension of trust is not very much researched with such methods. But have a look at the review if you want to dig deeper into those gaps. In our lab in Berlin at the Max Planck Institute and in the group of Ralf Hertwig particularly, there is a lot of discussion and a big emphasis on the ecological validity of our findings and experiments. And I don't know if this is a useful scale here, but I try to think about this trade-off between experimental control and ecological validity as something that often, is very difficult to compromise on either of those. I think that field experiments, in particular on online media or digital media, offer quite a good ratio between the two, so to say. That's what I think. Not sure. I mean, there is, of course, for some people, maybe very little control because you don't know what people do all the day, and you just see what they do on social media. You don't invite them to the lab, but you have probably a high ecological validity, at least because this is stuff they actually share with their friends and so on. I'm not sure. I'm new to this area anyway, so I don't know if there are good definitions for what a field experiment is. I think an experiment somehow includes a treatment. That's what I use as a definition, and sometimes maybe randomized assignment. There's also combined data more generally, so linking some kind of social media behavior with surveys, for example. This is not necessarily a treatment. So I think this is also something one can do, and it offers already great opportunities. I think when I think about the Reddit data, Almog, and where you ask people things about their personality and you collect their text and so on, that would fall into this category. And those are all cool possibilities. Okay, I think I skip over this slide. I just want to highlight 3 papers that I come across recently or frequently, and probably are relatively important, and they're all some kind of field experiments. And it's about the discussion about polarization. I'm sure you're all somewhat aware of that. And this is probably one of the most cited papers in this area. This is the Christopher Bale paper about exposure to opposing views on social media. And they find that there's increases polarization. So this is the very basic setup. The treatment here is that they incentivized participants to follow a Twitter bot for 1 month, and this Twitter bot retweeted accounts from the other political side, politicians or media persons, something like that. I'm not 100% sure. And you can have this in both sides, so Democrats and Republicans flipped. And what they found is that they found increased polarization on issue opinions after following this bot. So kind of a repulsive reaction to the other side. So that's a field experiment, and they collected, I'm not sure what they did with the Twitter data, but at least, they had a treatment in the field, and it lasted for 1 month. This is another paper which does a very similar thing, but still different. Maybe this is also a sign for the early phases of these field experiments and the lack of, standardized controls and standardized treatments and all these things. This is really a bit of a problem still, because this paper by Roy Levy finds that exposure to the other side does the opposite. It makes people approach each other. So this is what one would rather naively expect. And the difference is this study was on Facebook. This is not a very informative chart now, so you can ignore it. The difference is that this study was on Facebook, and the participants were incentivized to follow or to, how do you call this, so to subscribe to a certain news outlet site on Facebook, right? News outlets have, I think, Facebook sites public pages, and you can follow them or you can subscribe to them, and then you see their updates. So the difference is it's Facebook and it's news outlets, not people that they see. And of course, I'm not sure about the political extremity of the accounts in the previous experiment versus this one. However, this one finds decreased attitudinal polarization after it being exposed to the other side of partisan outlets. So some conflicting results also in field experiments. But if you are interested also in more details about the methodology, I think these papers are both well done and worth to have a look at. Another one that I really like is by Andy Guess and others, is the consequence of online partisan media, is also more on the media side. Here, the treatment was to incentivize participants to change their default browser start page. So whatever you get when you open a new tab, where one group has had Fox News, the other had Huffington Post, and the control group had no treatment, so to say. It's a bit more complex design with different waves, so I'm not going into detail. What they found is no change in polarization or in opinions, but rather a decrease in trust in mainstream media after they were incentivized to start with these different outlets. Especially, I think there was an asymmetric effect for the ones that were treated with Fox News. I want to highlight this paper just also to show the, I don't know, variety of treatments that are possible. I mean, we now had following an account, we had subscribing to a page or changing your default browser window. And I think one could even fantasize further what one can do. Actually, the study I will show now doesn't have, I mean, it has a treatment, but that's not the main idea. It's rather also to bring together behavioral data and survey data. And the research question with our project we wanted to get at is what drives sharing on social media? What are the motives for sharing content on social media? And we wanted to get a bit deeper than just in a big survey asking people, why do you share things on social media? Okay, so that's for background. Maybe you are aware of this line of literature by William Brady and others from the Van Bavel lab about emotional content and moralized content that seems to be particularly successful on social media. There is this observation that if you count moral or emotional words, you see a positive correlation with the number of retweets. That's a very, let's say, coarse observation, I would say, and there is quite a debate about this. I'll highlight that as well. A bit more deeper into this goes this follow-up work, also from at least Van Bavel lab by Steve Ratche. This is not only looking at the number of retweets, but what kind of reactions different types of content get on social media. And for some nice reason, they have these Facebook reactions, which are more like multi-dimensional than just number of shares or likes. Those are these emojis, angry faces, and happy faces, and so on. And what they find is that if they separate in and out group content, they find more angry reactions to out group content than to in-group content. So the kinds of things you expect, also the like button or this heart, whatever this is now, is more used for in-group content and so on. So some different reactions. But yeah, what a critique behind this research is, maybe you have seen this also, it's was prominently discussed by Jason Burton, that I think at the core of this critique is that it is not easy to answer microscopic psychological questions with macroscopic social media data. So if you want to say something about why people share content on Twitter or Facebook, it's difficult to just look at the aggregated correlations between numbers of shares and content. And he illustrates that social media data is so high dimensional that you find correlations for basically anything by correlating success or number of retweets with the number of X, Y, and Z letters in the tweets, and finds positive correlation. So I think it's fair to say that one needs to dig a bit deeper. Yeah, this is just a nice discussion paper I want to highlight about what social media data has to offer and where there are pitfalls and why we need to be cautious. It's a good read, I think, for everyone who wants to work with social media data. But if we now say, then let's just go back and completely rely on self-reported data, that's also problematic, because there is a systematic review that shows that, especially when it's about digital media use, the self-reported data and the recorded data doesn't seem to match very well. So my idea is to use the best of both worlds. I think I made this point several times now, but just to reiterate, to use the advantages of self-report so that you can get at things like attitudes and opinions in a very direct way if you really just ask people, but also use the opportunities of big data or social media data to get at an objective measure of, for example, the usage of digital media. Okay. Now we get to the more like actual experiment and to the interesting part. Sorry for the long intro. So what we did is we ran an experiment on Twitter. We did recruitment with Twitter ads. We did that because it is cheaper and I wanted to try it out. It was quite a cumbersome project. I can say that running Twitter ads is also not super cheap in the end. So roughly 200 eligible participants costed us around 3,000 euros for the campaigns. But I was just reminded why we did that, because I was recently in touch with a survey company, and if you really want to link survey responses to Twitter handles, at least the one I asked, and we can talk about more of the details, is even several times this amount for a similar number of participants. It's at least twice. So I don't know, but it was a hassle to you have to design the advertisement. You see this here. Twitter ads are always posted by an account. It always looks like a tweet. We had this account, the Sharing Study, and it posted our advertisements. It is very important that this is an trustworthy account. So if you run such a study, you need to create an account that looks that somehow makes clear that this is associated to your institution. We try to link to my research profile and to make it fully transparent who we are. However, I already discussed also problems with that, because there's in a certain part of the population that we might particularly be interested with such experiment, there's also a big distrust for academic institutions, maybe, right? And why should they click on such an advertisement? But I think most people didn't click because they think it's a scam or something. So the more followers our account study gained, and people commented, is this real? And others responded, yes, I got my money. Then it picked up and we got better rates. So it could also be that you have to build up this for longer. And if you at some point have a very, popular and trustworthy account, it's good. We also got hijacked by communities that are specialized in finding such, raffles or giveaways and stuff like that on Twitter. And then our tweet was distributed there and we got participants that were not within our target group. And that was problematic, but you can prevent that by making the tweet non-public. But then you don't have this kind of snowball distribution of your advertisement. That's a downside of it, but you cannot get hijacked so easily. So that's about the recruitment. But we can also dive a bit more deeper in this recruitment part. You can also do it differently. That's not necessarily part of the experiment. What you will always need if you run something on Twitter, and I imagine on other platforms, of course, like Reddit as well, you need an identifier for the participant. So you need to find that person on the platform and be able to look at their content or whatever they shared or how they behave. So we asked them that. We also had to ask them to follow us, so to follow this account. This is important because if this participant doesn't follow our account, we cannot send them messages, and we needed to send them messages first at the first step, actually, to verify that they are this Twitter account. So just as a funny story, I got a lot of sign-ups, and I had very active, very popular Twitter accounts in my sign-ups. And I was wondering, wow, that's great, interesting people in my experiment. And then I realized these were just some West African politicians who were certainly not signing up for my study because it got crazier and crazier, and this was people with millions of followers. And then I sent them a message and asked if what's going on, and they never responded. So I think this was just people copying different usernames in there. So what we did is we had a mechanism, like in many sign-up forms, where we sent them a message, a private message, after they signed up to the name they provided, and they had to click on a link in that message. So they had to have access to this account they provided. So that's a security measure we had to come up with. Then we observed people's behavior, and whenever they tweeted, we had a little machine that sent a message automatically to that person and asked, hey, you just tweeted, can you help us and tell us a bit why you tweeted? And people were incentivized to respond to these messages because only at the end they got the full reward. We paid them quite a bit. So we paid them just for the successful sign up and sharing their Twitter name and everything. We paid them $10. And after they finished everything, they got proportional to how many of these mini surveys, to how many of these small questions they responded, another 20 if they responded fully. But I think only very few responded to 100% of all messages. And yeah, in this message, there was just a very simple, quite short questionnaire. I kept it short because it was very annoying to be part of this experiment. You got messages whenever you tweeted, and if this would have been a very long questionnaire, I think we would have even higher dropout rates.
Philip, can you see the chat, or do you want me to ask questions that pop up in the chat?
Yeah, I saw the question, Steve. Yes, it's in addition. Yeah. So in the end, I can say that we ended up, for 200 people all over, we ended up with roughly 6,000 euros. Like it's 3 plus 3.
For 200 and something participants?
200, yes. Not 200 something, just 200.
200.
Yeah. As I said, I was just in touch. I can just say it. I was just in touch with YouGov, and for 1,000 participants, they asked for over 20,000 euros.
Yeah.
So I think you are still below that. But of course, you have all the work. So you have all the work of recruiting them and also paying them. So what we did is for the payment, we used PayPal, and we asked them for the email addresses, and that worked quite well, actually. So it seems it was in the US. Maybe PayPal is more prolific, more prevalent there, but we could pay everyone who signed up via PayPal, and there were no issues. But I had to do it manually. I didn't have an auto system for that. But for 200, that's possible. Maybe I have to write a little piece of code that does that, even though it feels dangerous to write a code that automatically sends money via PayPal. Anyways, what? Sorry.
No.
Yeah, that's the setup. I can now show you a few very first results, just rather descriptive things, and just a sanity check, because I'm in the middle of the data analysis. And what we have now is we have tweets, and we have the motives for sharing each specific tweet. And for advertisements, I don't think so. So I did select research or something like that in the process, but I also didn't get specifically in touch with them. I just ran the campaign. I am also not 100% sure if they are fully happy with this, but nothing happened. I mean, I think you can send people automated messages on Twitter. That's allowed. You can run studies. Once our study was blocked because of gambling, but I think this was a AI that detected the $30 thing in our text and thought it's a gambling thing, but it's not gambling, and that's why I think it's eligible. I check the terms of conditions sometimes. Anyways, our sample, this is what our sample looks like. We have rather young sample. What we did is we targeted old and young 50-50, and we did make some cutoff for old versus young, maybe 35 years or so. But you see that it didn't really manage to get at uniform distribution or something like that. But I mean, that's also not realistic and not representative for how old Twitter users are. What I did not yet do is to compare those with what is known about the whole Twitter population. But I will do that and see if this is somehow realistic. Most people.
It's not going to be 20% Republican.
Yeah. So the Republicans you think are overrepresented in our sample?
No, I don't think Republicans are overrepresented in your sample. I do know that obviously Twitter is Democratic leaning, but
yeah, that's true. But you see this also here, right? So we have very few, I mean, much fewer Republicans than Democrats. But what the actual ratio is, and if this is reflected here, or if we actually got less Republicans because we are a scientific institution or something like that.
Yeah,
could be. I looked at the accounts, of course, so I had some interesting accounts there, and also political ones. So so also if we look at the topics that are discussed and so on, I was quite pleased with that. And we have a quite good male-female ratio. But that was also because we did the targeting in a balanced way for gender. You cannot target for political orientation on Twitter. That's not allowed. You can approximate it by targeting people who follow Fox News or something like that. But of course, since this is a bidding system, those clicks will also become more expensive even. So If you're ready to spend even more money, then you can probably also get more Republicans if you are interested in this, or not sure if you will, but you can definitely, try. Generally, I think I will show you in a bit, but I think there are several downsides of doing doing recruitment with Twitter ads yourself. We discussed them. It's a lot of work. Also, you don't get your typical, I don't know, experienced survey participant who knows what's going on. Those were really in that way random people who were not really aware of what's or not participated in surveys before or so that led to some hiccups. And of course, we don't have so much control over the sample as if we pay a firm for doing that. They can control for more things and so on. A little bit we can do with the targeting mechanism of Twitter, but it seems not to work perfectly. So at least for the age part, but it could also be that it's really difficult to get people born in the 60s on Twitter for your survey. So this is a funny plot. This is each row is one participant. Yeah. So as I said, this is just things that are coming out of my script, so it's not polished. But if you can see it, the pink circles are tweets, and the blue the blue dots are survey responses. So whenever we got a response, then a blue dot overlays a pink one. First of all, what you see here is that we have quite high activity. We have different windows of when the survey took place. You see them of these islands of dots. And you see people tweet quite a lot. So we have 6,000 tweets from these 200 people, which I think is nice. I think, and that's a positive part of the Twitter ad recruitment, because people who actually click on Twitter ads, they are probably quite active on Twitter. And if you know, when they click on it, they were on Twitter at that moment. So that means that they are regularly, or at least recently, have been on Twitter. And that's, I think, a big advantage. I'm not so sure how this plays out if you, for example, recruit via YouGov, because, I mean, they say they have this pre-screening survey, and it says like people who use Twitter once a month or so. But I could imagine that those are less active users than the ones we get through on the platform itself. Yeah, and we have like roughly 50% response rate. So of course, some people really dropped out quickly. They just responded to a few tweets, and then they stopped. We annoyed them for some time, but we stopped at some point as well. So there was a mechanism that if after 2 hours there was no response to this tweet, we sent a follow-up message, and I think I sent 3 of those. And if then nothing comes, I stopped. When they tweeted next time, they got another message. So they were in this for a week, but they also didn't get the full reward. But yeah, these are all details, and they might actually matter. Like, how often do you ask people to respond? You know, how annoying is this thing? Is it better to have some kind of a rhythm, or if it's better to ask people in the evening or to a certain time? I'm not so sure. We asked them in real time because we wanted to get as close to the event of tweeting as possible. That was the rationale. Yeah, this is not very insightful, but people had an open text field to write why they share stuff on Twitter, and in the onboarding survey they responded why they themselves share stuff on Twitter, and it's about friends and news and people and community. And when we asked them why the other people share things on social media or on Twitter, they say it's about also about news and people, but also about attention and entertainment. And if we look at the free responses when we ask them in the situation, so those are, and sorry, the number on the top is wrong. This is the 3,000 tweets, not the 500. Those are the small surveys that they got whenever they were tweeting. And I think this is already changing a little bit. It's more about friends and sharing and funny than about information or attention. So, but as I said, this is not a quantitative measure. I'm getting to that. But the overall message I get so far from what we see is that social motives are actually quite important. Okay, so, and more important than people themselves, and also I think the research community sometimes thinks of. Often it's about sharing information, right, and informing others. But you know, appealing to the original author, if I like something from them or retweet something from them or show my community affiliation, so to say, I think are also quite important ones. And this is a more quantitative measure, so from our questionnaire, not the open text fields. So the dots are survey responses. On the left, you have 1 dot per participant. On the right, you have 1 dot per tweet. And you see that the most common motive is to express my opinion in both in the onboarding survey as well as in the microsurvey. So there is overlap. So it seems that people actually generally know why they are on Twitter and then also tell the same when they are in the situation. But there are some slight differences. So to connect with others is moving upwards. So connect with others seems to be more important in the situation. To bring attention to a topic is an important motive generally, and to inform others as well, but also to show my attitude, to entertain. Yeah. So, but I'll have to dig deeper into this. I mean, this is also the general responses. What I found interesting is also how consistent are these motives within participants, within people. So here, the different colors are the strongest motive they selected for each tweet. And this is again all the participants in each row, 1 person. And you see here, and I see my own legend. I don't see my own legend because I forgot what the colors are. Oh, yeah. So those are the more like informative or serious accounts maybe. So they seem to have rather yellow and yeah, greenish motives, while there are definitely types that are dark blue here who are there to entertain and are probably there more for the fun side of Twitter. So there are different types, but also you see quite some variation within people. I have not quantified that either, but I will do that, like how big is the variance of motives within people and between people. I think that's an interesting general thing. So in a way, it quantifies how dependent are your motives to the content you share versus to your own person, right? So, or the way you use Twitter, at least generally. One sanity check, because the general goal is, as I said several times, is to link these motives now also to the content of the tweets. I'm, as I said, in the middle of topic modeling and analyzing the URLs. I know that there's quite some experience in this group, so I'm very happy if to discuss further about how to run topic models on tweets, for example. But I'm getting there, so I already see things. This is a very simple sentiment analysis, and it just orders, so the dots are tweets, and it shows how negative the language are, or how positive the language is in each tweet, and then the motives on the left. And you see that for the most negative tweets, people say they share it to provoke others, to influence others, or to prove a point, which I was quite satisfied with, because for me, these are the more like manipulative or evil motives. While showing my achievements is the furthest to the bottom, while it is the most selected motive for the most positive language in tweets. Well, I'm not sure about this influence others motive. Seems to be both positive and negative. And as I said, I have to refine the content analysis. But just to give you a gist of what one can do if we have text of tweets and if we have motives, we can bring them together and understand better why people share certain content. As I said, there's a long way to go. I'm running a topic model. I also want to look at least some steps in the network and to quantify if this is rather content, if they retweet things, if it's from the in or out group, so I can check where the original authors are, and yeah, and some other rather exploratory analysis, because as I said before, such social media data is very rich, very high dimensional. You can look at many things, and that's also how we pre-registered it. We pre-registered a few research questions, but the part about which features of the tweets we look at, we have a list pre-registered, but we kept also a bit of flexibility there to be able to explore if there are particularly features of the tweet that are driving motives strongly that we did not think of in the beginning, to keep that open for us. So that's another interesting challenge in this domain, to pre-register such complicated data or complex data. Okay, and that's for now it. I have more details about ethics and stuff like that. But I think this is the broad overview of what we did on Twitter. And please stay tuned for a preprint with cleaner results and not this kind of ugly stuff I showed you now, and some more insights into the motives of sharing on Twitter. That's it. And let's go into discussion.
Thank you, Philip. I think let's please raise your hand if you want to ask a question, or just ask if you're here. Right, so Steve.
Yeah, thanks, Philip. That was great. Also very shocking, the cost for this. I mean, wow, 3,000 euros to get 200 people signed up. And then on top of that, you have to pay them, which I suppose that's okay, but that's very high. So I'm wondering why it is that high. How many imprints does it take to get people, and how did you target those people again? I mean, where did the ad go? Did you tell us that?
Exactly. I can give you a bit of a breakdown. So the costs come from the biggest problem is that you need people to actually sign up, not only to click on the link, because clicking on a link is not as expensive. So clicking on a link costs a bit more than $1 on Twitter. So that's or maybe $1.50 to make people click on your website. And that's the target of the campaign. And that's what you pay for bidding. And then there you have, I think, 10% rate of people who saw the tweet click on the link. But then you lose another 90% until the actual sign up and successful sharing of their Twitter handle and all these things. So this is a lot of friction, of course, because they click on the link, they see this welcome screen, which I tried to make engaging or somehow at least not scary or quite simple. But then they get to the informed consent form, of course, which will also scare off a few people. And then you have this complicated process, or not complicated, I try to make it super simple, but typing your Twitter handle, getting the message, clicking on the approval link, and the 200 is really the distilled number you get at this very end. And that's why you have to take the usual amount from Twitter times 10, because you lose 90% through the onboarding process. The targeting itself was simple. So we just took 4 cohorts. One was men between 18 and 34 or 35, and then men above 35, and then the same for women. That's all. We didn't, and country United States, and language English. So you see that here. And that worked well, at least country and language. Before, like after I closed after I made the advertisement non-public and it wasn't shared among communities who specialized on that, I really got only people from the US and who spoke English and so on. So that worked well. But yeah, this kind of targeting costs you a little more than $1 per person, per click. Sorry, per click.
Yeah, and that's the standard Twitter charge. I mean, Twitter is charging you that much for 1 click.
Yes, that's their price, and then the rest is your own business. So if I would make my website more engaging, I would probably, I think this is the best place to save money. So to make the whole to make the website more, I don't know, easy to use, the onboarding process simple, and so on.
Okay. Yeah, thanks.
It could be worth, I'm not sure, spending some of the dollars at that point for a company that, you know, does web design and makes your website better, and maybe even analyzes the dropouts within the process. Even though I was looking at that, I had that for my survey software, so I know where people dropped out, and most people dropped out in the before the consent form, so before clicking consent, and then you have the classical clash between ethics and being engaged. Yeah, so if we would reduce the consent form or make it hidden behind something like a click, if you want to click, here is the consent, but I agree, like the websites do it, they do it for that reason, I think, you would probably keep much more people.
Yeah, indeed. Okay.
Yes, and there's a good point so 2 good points in the chat. So yes, I will visualize it more, like to see how many people you lose at each step. That will be a good, impressive thing to show. And yes, thanks. That's what I just meant. I think the consent process is part of the problem. Yeah. They sit on their sofa, they are browsing Twitter, they're not prepared to get into a survey now, and maybe they were shocked about the, you know, complexity of the whole thing. Maybe they just thought, oh, sounds good, $30, let's click, and then they realize, oh yeah, shit, I have to do something, and I have to, I don't know, consent and send things somewhere, and they just stopped. So yeah, not sure how to reduce the costs, but in principle, I think it's definitely an option to use advertisements on social media to get participants.
Just 2 things that I wanted to add or to raise in the discussion. One is that we had similar issues about, you know, when we did the Reddit experiment, right? So we have some it just gives you some perspective. I mean, right, Steve? We thought that we had it bad with Reddit, and in retrospect, it seems like we did quite well in terms of getting the participants. But it is quite
dirty.
Yeah. It's it's not nice, and this brings me to my second.
Sorry,
point.
one short question. Remind me again, how did you do the recruitment on Reddit?
So we tried to go with the ads, right? And the ads didn't go well. And we got something like 20 participants from the ad, for throwing some money at it. What really worked well was DMing participants. So this is something that we could do on Reddit, right? So we just sent
directly.
We targeted individuals. Oh well, I don't know. It worked out about $67 per respondent.
It was insane, yeah.
Yeah. So we could DM the participants on Reddit, and we had, I think, over 10% turn back, which was really good. The problem was that for most people it was okay, but we also had this loud minority of people who really disliked us just sending a DM and asking them to participate if they want, and this caused some trouble down the road. But basically, this was how we could get to 1,100 participants.
So this was automated, right? The messages.
Yes, it was automated, but we knew who we were targeting, right? So it wasn't just run. I mean, it wasn't all of Reddit. So we had specific communities that we targeted and asked them to participate in the study, and many of them decided to participate. But the point I wanted to make was that I recently was in Chicago in the Computational Social Science conference, and I think Chris Bale said that he was working on a platform that you could get participants and cross them across their social media. Either it's the Twitter handle or whatever, but let's say the Twitter handle and get also some behavioral measures. And because it's something that the field struggles with. So it seems like there's a lack of a good way to collect data from social media, as you just show. And it seems like there's room for companies to do something like that. It's not just YouGov and so I think that it's coming. And if I understood correctly, there's something that Chris Bale will launch very soon. So.
Yeah, I mean, I would say he's probably one of the most precedented people who could launch something like that. There should be, I mean, I'm not sure if Prolific or so can offer that at some point, or if they would do it, or I mean, at least a platform like that would be great, because as you say, ads have their problems, they're expensive, and also they have a low conversion rate. And DMs have other problems, and as you say, like people might feel offended. Also, some platforms wouldn't allow automated, large-scale direct messages. Even on Twitter, you could send people message and you get this message request. I get those, but that's spam often and really annoying. And I would not click on a survey that approached me like that, probably. So yeah, it's a difficult trade-off. I think, sorry, in the chat, just that's a good point. More attractive should be okay. Yes.
I mean, one idea, Philip, I don't know if you've done that, but what if you paid people $5 just to sign up, and you tell them that up front? You say, on the first screen, okay,
I did that.
In the next 5 minutes, you get $5 instantly.
They get absolutely. That's what I did. They got 10.
That's what you did. So you paid them to sign up.
Yes, they got 10. I show you the screen.
So they had to do nothing else but to sign up and give you their handle.
See, this was my welcome screen. This is how the study works. And maybe
Right.
it's a bit too much, but answer a few questions, approximately 10 minutes, and you get the initial $10. And that's what people got. And they understood. So most of the people, so I got messages, so like, where's my initial $10 and so on, when I didn't transfer it quick enough. And then in the end, they get the other 20. But as you see, I'm not a professional, graphic designer. The advertisement itself even had this kind of, 5 steps process. I tried to make it somehow engaging, but probably that I could imagine that if there are professional, social media campaign or social media content creators, they would make that much more visible, that you get $10 for the first few clicks.
And when did you ask for consent? Was that before they signed up or afterwards?
After. So they before, sorry, no. So you see the welcome screen, there's this procedure, and you say you will get $10, and then there comes the consent form, and then there comes all the questions and stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wonder if you can sign them up without having to do a consent form.
So that's where also the question in chat is getting at, is we have to discuss this with the IRB boards, and so I think I was already going a bit towards the limit of what they're used to, at least, to link social media data with survey data that's potentially sensitive. You have to be a bit careful with this kind of data, because if I ask people about their contact information and who they are and so on, and then link this to their Twitter account, they are automatically de-anonymized and all those things. So I'm stripping down everything. I'm not asking about any personal information and so on. And if we now also say we move the consent form to the back and make it super short, or somehow behind a link, I think we are slowly approaching what the platforms are already doing. And I think this is what distinguishes us from them, right? That we do a proper informed consent and have an IRB board.
Yeah. I'm just wondering if there is a way you can tweak the consent so that, just the act of signing up doesn't require a complicated consent, other than to say, I will I will provide this, you pay me, then we take it from there and negotiate each individual experiment or something, right?
This is just a foot in the door, basically, right?
Yeah, just to get people signed up, if that's where they drop out. And of course, you have the other problem that they have to click on the link that you send them a DM, and then they have to click on that, right?
Yeah, exactly. This is also another trade-off, that you want real people that really sign up. So you need this kind of security check.
Yeah.
But it makes, of course, things complicated. I also had several participants who then didn't find the link, or especially interesting older participants who had then problems in finding the link in the chat or so. And I was really desperate to get them on board because I wanted them to participate. But there were some issues if the process becomes. But I'm sure in the real world, in the marketing world and so on, there are people who are very specialized on making such sign-in processes as smooth as possible, right? Signing up to creating an Amazon account is probably quite easy and optimized for dropouts. So I think we can improve there more if we stick to this type of recruitment.
So, but you could now go back to those, whoever is following the sharing study, and invite them to another study, couldn't you?
Yes, this is possible. I have I have everyone who's
so
still.
You could build this panel effectively over time.
That's what I wanted to say. That if you can build trust with such an account, and it becomes like the Max Planck research study account, and if you run studies from there, those are people who are in general interested in such things. That's actually it's actually a good idea. I mean, probably you can make a business out of that and then leave academia and become a rich, because what YouGov is asking for their panel is quite a lot. So Yeah.
Yeah, I talked to Prolific about linking, social media with surveys, and this was some time ago, about a year ago or so, and they were very negative about that. They were not interested in doing this, which kind of surprised me because, for them it would be a marketing opportunity and it's filling a need, and, but they were not interested in that, unfortunately.
Yeah, that's but maybe they want to distinguish themselves, so don't want to get into this. It's a dirty business. And on, yeah.
You know how many unfollow the account? Like, because even if you follow, they could always unfollow the moment they've got their money and run. So do you have any numbers on that?
Yes, I had a few people who did that, but not many actually. This wasn't a big issue. I'm not sure how many now I still have. I can actually check. But some people also switched their account. So they unfollowed me and then switched their account to private. So I couldn't even get their tweets anymore, because once I have their Twitter handle, and then I could at least still look at their tweets, even though if they didn't respond anymore to my surveys and didn't get my messages, but at least I would have this kind of observational data left. But some of them even made their account private, so I can never get back to their tweets. Also, I have to say, this is also GDPR, and this is important to keep in mind, that if they delete their tweets, I have to delete them myself as well, so I cannot keep them. I mean, what I did is now, some weeks after the experiment, I collected the tweets newly. So everything that has been deleted since then is gone, but I have to anyways. And now I'll do an analysis and put it into very abstract formats and graphs, and then I cannot, in retrospective, delete it anymore. I will also not make the tweets or the tweet IDs public, because that's agreement with our IRB. What I will do is I will just publish a abstract list of features, like, the sentiment and the topic, and maybe the top level URL and a very coarse timestamp, but not more than that, so that it's not possible to re-identify the tweets, the people. But you could, I mean, in principle, I think that would be allowed to publish the tweet IDs, because the IDs are at least nothing that's, this right to be forgotten.
Yeah, well, the tweet IDs are often published. I've seen a lot of studies that publish the tweet IDs, and then if somebody deletes their tweet, that ID no longer works, right?
Absolutely, that's fine. My only problem with that was that if you have the IDs, you can re-identify that person, or at least you can find the Twitter account. And then you have the survey responses, and you then know what motives they have to be on Twitter.
But you can't link. Well, but the survey data, if you post them, they're not linked to the tweets, or are they?
They are.
Ah, okay.
And also, if you have one Republican, and it's so yeah, it gets really tangled up. I think we're past the hour. Any more questions before we wrap it up? Right. So, Philipp, thank you so much for the talk. It's been really interesting. And yeah, we'll see you soon in person.
Yes.
Exactly. We'll meet in Berlin. Yes, great. And thank you for the opportunity. It was a nice discussion, and looking forward to field experiments. Okay. Have a good weekend. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.